Home Show.
Philip from Marysville, Washington has a question about foam bats.
That's right. It's a new kind of bat. No,
I know.
I'm talking
like
about.
Get out here. Okay, foam bats. What's the question?
Only in Seattle, dude. No, there's because Marysville is a suburb of Everett, which is a suburb of Seattle. So, and I have a client.
You have a suburb of a city.
Yeah. Phil,
okay.
if you need a plumber, call Apollo Plumbing right there in Marysville. They'll help you. Okay,
fine.
All right, Philip writes. I'm curious. He's talking about the vaulted ceiling that he's got there, and he says, "I'm curious about these 2x6 rafters." He sent this picture in. Is it better to fur out and use rigid foam on bats, or just bat insulation? The area, he says, is vented.
When you vent a space, it better have an exhaust and an intake. If it doesn't, especially somewhere like Washington where you have some really damp weather, the water will get up in there and it won't be able to escape. So my first warning is this. You've got to make sure that it is vented completely from bottom to top. If it's not, then I'm going back to the old adage, either do it right or don't do it at all, and seal it tight. And if you're just going to use 2x6 rafters and you are going to insulate it and have a vaulted ceiling, if I was the builder, I would tighten that thing up so no air gets in there, no humidity gets in there, and you go back to the fact that it's an insulation sandwich and you're insulating the outside to the inside, but don't let water get up in there. And water comes in all forms, and one is, in the air, it's humidity. So I think I would probably seal it up. But you can do what you want, but just if you're going to vent it, make sure it's exhaust and intake, not just intake, because a lot of people make that mistake. And secondly, you can foam it there if you do it tight. If you're going to ventilate it, then I guess you could still foam it, but I would be really careful about the ventilation. The rest of it I'm not too concerned about.
So about how much airspace does he need clearance-wise there for if he's going to ventilate the
if you are going
area
to ventilate,
right?
The minimum airspace you need is 3/4 inch. That goes right down to the old guidelines back to the radiant barriers down here in the South, where you have to have that 3/4 inch. And here's why. An attic does not all vent. What it does is the air slowly goes up to the bottom of the roof deck. And then right below the roof deck, that's why a roof has a slant. It starts to follow the slant out, hopefully, a ridge vent. And that's how it's designed. So the air movement is within a half inch or so of that roof decking. So the Florida Solar Energy Center came up with the idea that with radiant barriers or with any kind of very minimal venting like that, 3/4 is a really good standard to start with.
All right, and then he just needs the soffit vent at the bottom, a ridge vent at the top to let the air go through.
And it's got to be balanced right. This is not something where you're just opening up a big attic space, because that's pretty simple. But this has to be balanced where you have enough intake and enough exhaust. And we're getting into the formula where you have more intake than you do exhaust, about 60% intake, which is the soffit vents, and 40% exhaust minimum, which would be a ridge vent in this case, hopefully. And that way you'll be able to get the right balance, because soffit vents don't all work at the same time. Because when the wind blows in a direction on a house, you get positive and negative pressures. And I'm going to bore everybody right now, but you just got to have the balance right.
Yeah, I don't think it's so boring. I think it's real interesting because it explains the Mother Nature mechanical system that you're using.
It is Mother Nature. And you can go down to things like trom walls and wing walls, and you can go all the way back into the passively cooled practices. It's all positive and negative pressures and sunlight and shade. You put all these things together and you can create wind through a house, although you could also have a very spicy dinner and create wind too.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
You got a question? Go ahead and visit HomeShowRadio.com. Find that Ask Tom form, fill it out, send it in, and we'll cook up an answer for you.
Sorry.
Spicy, too. And we post a new one of these every day, 365 days a year, by the way, at our website, HomeShowRadio.com, our Facebook page, and our YouTube channel, where you'll find hundreds of other answers as well.